I know. It's a big day. Welcome to SBM Infectious Diseases. We're pretty excited too. We wanted to let you know first that infections kill people, and just about any specialty you go into, you'll see it, and any place in the world you'll see it, and you'll see it causing real morbidity and mortality. So you need to learn how to deal with these things. This could give rise to some reasonable paranoia. Infections are everywhere, and this might lead you into joining the church of bacteria are bad, viruses are bad, and so on. The church of demonization of things. I would submit to you, however, that you're mostly inhuman, that actually there is more bacterial DNA, more bacterial cells in you than human cells, and actually that's not even talking about the viruses in there as well. This thought and other things lead us to a more nuanced view that maybe it's not about good versus bad, but more about balance, that some organisms are actually really good for you and that you want to have them in there, and others are not. The archetypal example of this is C. diff. It's a diarrheal infection you learn about that happens when you depopulate the good bacteria from your body. So if this is so, and we know that there are pathogens, the bad guys, and commensals, the innocent players in the game, you need to be able to figure out which is which. And so that's a big theme in this course. In addition, you'll understand that we have some age-old enemies. Staphylococci have been our foes for a long time. And also, every year there are emerging new things, from Ebola epidemic of 2014 to the 30 years of the HIV epidemic and beyond. This is always changing, irretrievably changing. And who knows what the future will bring. And so we have our tools to try to fight back against those bugs that are evil to us. And, antibiotics are among the main ones. Know that Fleming discovered penicillin actually early on in the 20th century and didn't really start saving lives until around the Second World War. But really rapidly after that, we realized that although penicillin was the cool kid in the block, bacteria believe in evolution, even if not all humans are smart enough to do it. And so they evolve really quickly. And so it took really only something like 2 years from the time that we were sort of identifying penicillin as a drug to see resistance to it in the test tube before it ever actually was used widespread in humans. And in the 1960s is when we saw the first really highly resistant staphylococci. And more recently, we've had multiple highly resistant organisms, resistant staph, resistant gram-negative rods, lots of badness out there, and only getting worse. And in fact, some people have even wondered if we're getting into a post-antibiotic era. Does any of us want to go back to the 1910s, 1920s, when young, healthy people could be felled by what are currently treatable infections? Well, so one big answer to this huge threat is antibiotic stewardship. We know that one driver of antibiotic resistance is misuse of antibiotics in humans, that people who have a mild bronchitis or a cold get just in case it'll help you kind of antibiotics, and that kind of waste those antibiotics, and so that person is now colonized by resistant bugs, and they transmit those to others, and they get infections from them, and then the antibiotics don't work. And so using antibiotics wisely is one major theme in this course. Another is the idea that not all antibiotic resistance arises in humans. Actually, arguably an even greater driver of antibiotic resistance is giving antibiotics to cows and other industrial animals in industrial meat production. And that sort of points at public health measures to try to make a difference in infectious diseases outcomes. It's the first example I've mentioned of huge population-level interventions. So if you know that antibiotics can save lives and also that antibiotics can be misused, really the question you're asked to answer is, when do you decide when treatment is worth it? And so let me take you through the process that you'll learn in this course. The challenge basically breaks down into a whodunit. If you see a particular syndrome, what do you think likely caused it? Is that influenza, or is that a rhinovirus, or is that E. coli? And then from there, you make a clinical judgment. Do you need to treat that thing? Is that something that's just going to resolve on its own, or is this a life-threatening infection, or someplace in between? That lets you decide. Do I treat? Do I observe and palliate? Or do I need to get more information so that I can decide? Once you have decided that you want to treat, then you might sort of say, okay, oh shoot, what do I use to treat pertussis? Or what do I use to treat hepatitis C? And you need to be able to link the bug with the drug. So how to think. You identify the syndrome, you figure out what's the epidemiologically likely culprit, and then you tailor treatment. But stop right there. You need to know about prevention as well. How could you have prevented other cases of influenza, for instance, if you diagnosed that there was an epidemic afoot? So that's another huge piece of this course, is knowing which vaccines, et cetera, are available. Well, let me drill down into some of those boxes a little more. So what's the syndrome? You'll need to figure out, is that just a cold, and or could it be pneumonia that's causing that cough? And what are the facts that you need to make that differentiation? You want to know, is that just a tension headache, or does that AIDS patient actually have toxoplasma encephalitis? Once you know the syndrome, what are the epidemiologically likely causes? And so your brain is going to become filled with tables kind of like this. If it was pneumonia, what would be the common causes? If it was cellulitis, what bugs would cause that? And so I would urge you in your studying to make connections like these. Once you know what the syndrome and likely bugs are, you need to ask, will it benefit from antibiotics? And partly this is about weakness versus strength of the infection. If this is sort of a mild bronchitis that's going to make somebody a little unhappy for a few weeks, even if you could treat it, you might not. And so weakness versus strength is a piece of this. Another part of this is that if it is from a virus like rhinovirus, say nothing you can do to treat that organism, at least in 2014, and so you shouldn't try. Don't waste those antibiotics. I don't know if you're noticing a recurring recurring question here. If antibiotics would work, if you think it actually is a bacterial infection and you think it's a bacterial infection that needs to be treated, then which ones will cover it? And we're going to pile those on and help you sort of get there. Along the way, I talked about public health measures that get there, and so we're going to talk about public health infrastructure. How do we know that epidemics are out there? We're also going to talk about prevention, and that could be stereotypical things like vaccines or hand washing, other infection control measures, but we're also going to get into other things like social justice. So we're going to have a session about the ethics of helping with the social determinants of health from our HIV clinic. And how much are you as a provider obligated to sort of help deal with the poverty that's driving their poor access to healthcare? How much are you engaged with prevention of that infection through education or through stemming misconceptions about the illness? We'll have a discussion about that too. So what are we going to do to your brain? We're basically going to try to help you make connections between syndromes and bugs, help you connect your clinical judgment to that estimation of causation, and then connect bug with drug, and then also give you a toolkit of different measures you can make to keep infections at bay, whether it's vaccination or social activism. And this is the ultimate result. This is your personal satisfaction, and I know you're in a happy place here in the spring of your second year, but it warms the heart to see what happens at the end of this course. You will have 2 standard deviations above the national mean and related board scores. Yes, that's nice, but also you will hit the wards prepared to treat some of the major killers worldwide today using molecularly ingenious tools that really only have been recently discovered, that still are being discovered amid a tumult of new infections and new emergent technologies. It's a geek's dream, and you're living it, baby. You're living it.